That's Deputy McCullen on to Corrivi. Okay.
Minister, home repossessions are not in anyone's interest. This bill makes banks' repossession of homes easier in the case of mortgage arrears. Instead of protecting people from being thrown onto the streets, the government has worked diligently and efficiently to put forward a piece of legislation which will increase the stress and fear already experienced by families struggling to keep their heads above water. This bill will bring more worry to people already lying awake through sleepless nights, fearing the day their debts will catch up on them. These debts accrued to provide a roof over their heads and of their families. I want to speak specifically on an issue which many here might not consider when they talk about repossessions. It is an issue I've raised again and again in the House with little concrete response on what is being done to tackle the problem, and I fear that this bill will open the door for a much greater threat. The group I speak of are tenants in homes where landlords are in arrears. The rental market has grown a lot over the last few years, with demand causing doubling rents to go up by 6% over the last 2 years, and the number of available homes decreasing fourfold since 2009. There are a huge number of people living in rented homes across the state, and the facts about the precarious nature of the ownership of these homes is clear from the most basic figures on mortgage arrears. Some 29% of the 150,000 buy-to-let mortgages are in arrears. 17% are in arrears for 90 days or more. This means a staggering 26,770 rental properties are at risk of serious default. What is to happen to the tenants of these properties? Yes, thankfully these families, these individuals do not face the problem of crippling debt that many mortgage holders do, but they face a serious problem which must be dealt with. Housing need has never been greater or more severe in the history of this state. Yet this bill, which should be named the Home Repossession Bill, if the government were being honest, is going to put more families at risk of being in severe housing need. I've dealt with so many families over the last few weeks and months whose rented homes are under threat, because despite the fact that they're paying their rent, in many cases more than the mortgage repayments could possibly be, they now face evictions. Landlords are receiving these payments, but are not paying their mortgages, or they're part paying their mortgages. The banks don't want these homes to stay in their ownership, it would seem. They don't want to be landlords or to honour the agreements which tenants signed up to with their landlords and did nothing to break. Banks want a quick buck by selling off these properties and to move on. And that is likely what is going to happen on a large scale, and where will we be then? If nearly 50,000 buy-to-let mortgages are in arrears, these problems will only be getting worse and cannot be underestimated. To do so is playing with the lives of many, many people. This government has done too much of that already. One particular group of renters are especially in danger, those on rent supplement and RAS. These schemes, which use private housing to deal with the state's failure and unwillingness to provide a sufficient number of publicly owned homes, has been shown in this regard to be unreliable and unsuitable for dealing with the huge housing need in this state. Families on rental supplement and RAS are by definition families from low income brackets. Rent supplement bars its recipients from working, perpetuating a poverty trap even in boom times. Someone on rent supplement is in no position to find new accommodation with spiralling rents and the imposition of deposits, never mind the terrible conditions of much of the housing on offer at the lower end of the scale. Recent Dublin City Council inspections found 90% of flats they looked at in the city were below the most basic standards. This measure and cuts already put in place has and will force many families into housing which is not suitable for human habitation. That is the result of Fine Gael and Labour policy. People on RAS were guaranteed by their contracts they would not be allowed to go without a home. They lived up to their side of the bargain, but the state has been found wanting. Local authorities don't want this to happen either, but what can they do? They are not allowed to build housing, with cuts of over $1 billion to the housing budget since 2008. We need to address these problems. We cannot allow this catastrophe to become a reality for potentially thousands of people at risk. I've called on the Minister for Environment and the Government to take the initiative to negotiate a binding code of conduct with lending institutions to ensure that no family is thrown out on the streets because of a repossession. I call on the Minister again to take this up and to work with these families who the state have already failed in many cases. This crisis in housing is building. It's getting worse. In my constituency office, on a daily basis now, I'm meeting people that are in serious trouble. They can't even get a rent supplement. People are saying, and landlords are saying, we don't want a rental supplement, and this has to be addressed. They cannot be allowed to refuse money. And what are the reasons why they are refusing and saying that they're not going to accept a rental supplement? I think it's outrageous. We need to address this. Thank you.